Welcome to the Prepped and Polished podcast, the podcast that empowers you to take control of your education. Featuring weekly interviews with influencers in the world of education, as well as tutoring tips, lessons, and updates. And now, here's your host, Alexis Avila.
Hi everyone, welcome to another tutoring tips, grammar tips episode of the Prepped and Polished podcast. It's your host Alexis Avila, Prepped and Polished, South Natick, Massachusetts is where I am speaking from. Please be sure to check out our website, www.preppedandpolished.com for more info. And while you're there, sign up for our free tutoring and test prep tips newsletter. Comes out monthly. You can submit a question during the show or after the show, radio@preppedandpolished.com. We love hearing from you. Let's get right to it. So, in most instances, different from is the appropriate choice. Different than does, of course, show up often in informal conversation and writing, but for a strict test like the SAT, it's advisable to be familiar with the proper rule. So, then is used with direct comparative adjectives. So A is better than B, or A is more predictable than B. Now, when you throw different into the equation, different does not follow this pattern. It's not a comparative adjective. So you could say differenter than would be appropriate. If you could say differenter, then would be appropriate, but you can't, can you? But differenter is, of course, not a word. So for this reason, different from is the best choice. Different from is the best choice. A couple examples. For lunch, Alice usually brought more exotic food than her coworkers did. For lunch, Alice usually brought different kinds of food from her coworkers. So there are occasions when different is indeed part of a comparison. And these are signaled by the inclusion of more. So here's an example. Tim's haircut was slightly different from that of the other boy in school, so Evan wanted his to be even more different than that. Evan wanted his haircut to be different from Tim's. So while we're on the subject, let's briefly touch on the opposite case, similar. This adjective takes a different preposition from, and it's coupled with to, so similar to. So here's an example. Evan's haircut was similar to Tim's. Evan wanted his haircut to be more similar to Tim's than to those of the rest of the boys in school. So to recap, unless different is used in conjunction with more as a direct comparative adjective, it should be accompanied by the preposition from instead of than. So don't forget that. And its counterpart similar is always accompanied by the preposition to. This wraps up our show, episode 83, Grammar Tips Different Than versus Different From. Please join us for episode 84 with parenting expert and writer Julie Lithcott-Hames. To access all of our podcast episodes, go to preppedandpolished.com/podcast. Thanks for joining us on the Prepped and Polished podcast. Now go out there and take control of your education.
You've been listening to the Prepped and Polished podcast. For more information, check out preppedandpolished.com. Also, you can follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Thanks for listening. Class dismissed.